Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm chatting with Frank Russo, who is a comedian out of Alberta who I've been corresponding with a little bit on Twitter. And I thought, hey, it might be fun to have Frank on to get a sense of where he sees the pulse of young Canadians and everything that's been changing in Canada over the last decade. Frank has lived across Canada and he's got some pretty funny perspectives on everything that's happening from media to real estate to politics. And I thought, hey, this could be a fun chat. All right, everybody, enjoy the conversation. It's kind of comical. I was chatting with my buddy, who's a hedge fund manager last week, and he was saying to me about how Toronto, now that condo prices are coming down, now's the time to move into a condo in Toronto because it's getting cheaper. But then he goes, on second thought, Toronto it's not what it used to be. It's gotten kind of lame. It's not the great city it once was. And I'm like, great. What's this idea that Toronto ever had any kind of soul?
I think a lot of those complaints when people talk about that, everything, I think they're more or less talking about the fact that everything's recorded on your phone now. Like you used to have a ton of fun in Toronto when nobody had a cell phone and you could just go out, be whatever, get into all kinds of trouble with your buddies, but no one ever caught you. So it was just fun stories of Toronto. Now you do anything, there's like 50 people with video evidence of it. Like I used to work at a nightclub in Toronto and yeah, half the crazy stuff that goes on there is like 10 of your friends just waiting to like send this crap to the cops now.
So you move out to Alberta, and I got a lot of friends in Alberta, and we're often at odds too, because it's kind of like I find my friends in Toronto, they're too uh, liberal or left, or I'll use the term that I don't even really like, which is woke. It's a little bit too much like that with a lot of people I know from Toronto. It's almost like I'm stepping on eggshells being around them because there's everybody's offended by everything. And then it's like my friends from Alberta, it's almost like they're just so contrarian in nature about whatever the mainstream media is saying that they just by default assume that it's some sort of conspiracy out to get them. Do you find that at all moving out to Alberta, or it's just been a
I do
breeze?
that one thing I've noticed from doing jokes out here is I don't have to explain a conspiracy theory before making jokes about it. All you have to say is like WEF and like half the crowd's just locked in like, all right, cool. But yeah, no, Toronto was very sensitive. The audience is not so much, but like just policing amongst comics. Here it's kind of wide open, but I also tell a few guys that I see every now and again where it's like that joke is an Alberta joke. Like don't take that anywhere else.
So I saw one bit that you did recently about what's happening at Rogers with I guess that what they did was they collected data on all of the call center transcripts from the various calls that everybody who worked there were making, and then they used it to train AI to effectively eliminate these people's jobs. You had a funny bit about it. Well, what was the joke? It
Oh, it's
was
yeah, they used AI. They used their call centers to train an AI, and then they fired everyone at the call center when they were done training the AI, which is great because now I'm not going to understand AI's accent either.
do you think that's really a problematic, or do you think this is just entirely predictable?
It's kind of predictable. It's kind of problematic. A little bit of both. Like I was doing an interview a while ago for like a tech job, and the guy asked me mid interview, he's like, "What would you do if AI like destroyed this role?" And I was like, "I guess I'll learn to build tables. I don't know. Like what? Why would you hire me if you've got this thing around the corner?" Like, um, but no, I don't. I refer to AI as like we've peaked technologically, and this is like the as seen on TV phase, where like all the stuff it does is stuff that you're like, yeah, that shouldn't have been someone's job anyways. So like call center stuff, a lot of it now, if you order a pizza, I'm talking to a robot anyways. I'm just pressing 1, 2, 3 or whatever to get my menu options. Now I'm talking to a fake person who's AI, but it's basically the same thing. Like I used to work at the CRA when I was in college, and it was just for tax season because there's still like whatever a couple 100,000 people send their stuff in by paper. So you'd have to do all that stuff, and I just remember working there, and they'd always be like, "Never complain about getting people to switch over to computers or whatever. Make you want them to do it on paper because that keeps us employed." And it's like, yeah, but that's like this is a waste of everyone's time. And we all know that computers work. Everyone who's coming up now only knows how to operate with computers. Like I can do my taxes in 10 minutes on my computer. If you gave me the pen and a piece of paper and fill that thing out, I'm going to be here for 3 days. So I never understood the resistance to where things were going, and a lot of the time you're thinking of a small group of people when you can actually like do a lot more with a lot less.
Did you get to know the CRA quite well when you worked there, or were you just kind of there for,
I knew the attitude of working there. How's that?
Yeah, I just asked that because it's funny, if you Google how many people work at the IRS and how many people work at the CRA, the numbers are not that far off. It's like, I think that there's like 59,000, work at the CRA and like 79,000 work at the IRS. I'm this is off the top of my head, but the numbers are like remarkably close
Yeah,
based on a
then
quick little Google query. Um, I'm curious here, where did you find that there were massive inefficiencies at the CRA?
oh, yeah. There was, when I first started working there, they show you around the thing, and the place I was working had 3 levels, and the guy was like, "There's the staircase, the escalator, and the elevators. Like, when you first start, you'll take the stairs because you're motivated. Once you settle in, you'll start taking the escalator, and when you've stopped caring, you'll take the elevator." And you would watch people stand there and wait for it because it just burns an extra 10 minutes because 'cause they're waiting for the elevator, and you're like, "This is crazy." Okay. But no, it's very like we would wrap stuff up at like 1 o'clock, and it's like, "Hey, can I go home?" And they're like, "Well, no, if we send you home, then we would have to like log that you were only here for half a day, and then we'll hire less people next." Like they're so focused on keeping as many people hired as possible, which I guess is a good thing if that's what you need. They're so focused on that that like efficiency was very low on the list.
I'm also curious, you're always commenting on what's sort of happening in media. Uh, Guys that I know that I play sports with or hang out with on weekends, a lot of them are talking about how Rogers just jacked the price on
Oh yeah.
what's it called? Sportsnet.
Sportsnet Plus. I was this close
Sports.
to buying it, and then I saw them jack the price. I was like, "Oh, I guess we're going back to illegal streaming, boys. One more year."
What do you think the Canadian media landscape looks like over the next couple of years? Where do you think we're heading?
Basically just live sports. That's all that's left. I think once Amazon, like, I believe they're halfway to purchasing NFL games now, where they have at least like 6 or 7 a year. Once they get that in full, it's over.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, because no one I know has cable. Like, no one I know under the age of 35 has cable. If they do, they're very rich or they're an outlier, but everyone else I know just has a handful of streaming services. So if they like sports, they have Sportsnet, and then they got Netflix or Disney, one of the 2, I don't know.
Yeah.
Sportsnet is just a podcast now. Whenever I turn it on, it's 3 guys sitting with microphones in front of them. Like, well, the one guy's, like, in his basement. And I'm like, "Hey, this is I don't know why you're making millions and everyone on YouTube's doing this for, like, 10 cents a click or whatever." But yeah, no, it's everything. I had a few friends who were in, broadcasting school in Toronto when I was there, and they none of them were ever taught that the internet was coming. And this is, like, 2018, 2019. Like, they weren't even acknowledging, YouTube as a possibility to do this as a full-time career, and that was right at the time that the Pat McAfee show was starting to blow up, and they just like, I would talk to them about it, I'm like, "Everything's online now," and they're like, "No, no, I wanna get on TV, I wanna be a presenter for TSN." It's like, "Well, TSN's firing every other person to keep the lights on, so what what's the end goal?" I'm trying to go viral because of something I did on daytime TV. It doesn't make any sense though, because like I'm gonna see it on my Instagram, which is not, whatever, cool, but I'm busy. I'm not at home to watch this. Like your target audience is geriatrics and stay at home moms. It's cool that you're like being shared on Instagram, but how does that funnel money to your network? How do you guys profit off of that?
Yeah, that's exactly the problem that Colbert had, right?
Yeah,
They're paying all this money to produce this show, and they're getting slaughtered in the core demographic, which is 25 to 49. That's the only market that advertisers really want.
yeah.
They're not after, as you call them, geriatrics. Uh,
That's listen, my
uh,
dad is a dedicated Colbert statistic. He doesn't watch, he just falls asleep with the TV on. So, yeah, when they collect the numbers, I assume that's what most of late night audience is now. It's just people like my dad who's asleep on the couch waiting to wake up at like 1 a.m. and go to bed.
and then the big jokes that they have, they may have a bit once a week or a couple jokes a week that just get repurposed on TikTok and they end up on there and they do quite well. But then it's like, how are you making any money doing this? I mean, you're paying
Yeah.
like over $500,000 an episode to produce this show, and like if you're lucky, you get a couple viral clips on TikTok that you know, someone like yourself could make, and using just your phone and not spending $500,000 a day doing it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an archaic model. I don't see how you make money off of that. And then I think half of his problem was he basically just ostracized half an audience. during the I always thought late night was just you go, you watch, it was a fun time, and it's just stupid jokes, and now it's everything's just political, and it's like I already watched this on the news at 8, and then again at 10, and then everyone else has gotten their jokes, and by the time you get to late nights, like, I've already heard this for 6 hours straight. So I don't know if there's an audience for that at that point.
Yeah, he kinda just turned into a de facto version of, uh, Rachel Maddow on
Yeah,
MSNBC, like, he'd just
they even look
basically be
they kinda
reading
look the same if you
headlines.
put their face to face.
Like, you'd be reading headlines, and it would just basically be they'd just be reading stories from some, like, one of the last good writers at the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. Well, I guess the Wall Street Journal has some decent funding, but, they'd just be regurgitating their stories and trying to act, like it was some kind of original bit that they did, when really the whole punchline was what some, writer at one of the few remaining newspapers put together for them.
Well, it's that, and the internet moves so fast. They record that stuff in the afternoon. Some of the times, the stuff that they were referencing, it's already been debunked by the time it gets to late night. So you're watching him like say something that made sense at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. By 6 o'clock, you learned X, Y, and Z extra about it, and now you're just watching a guy who looks like he read yesterday's news make jokes about it. Yeah, because that was I think Bill Maher had that one. Remember, I think it was like 6 years ago. It was the native dude and the kid in the MAGA hat or whatever, and it was like a 3 second clip, and everyone got all upset about it, where they were just standing off face to face. And then within like a day, it figured out that those kids were just waiting for their bus, and then all this other crazy shit was happening, and then these guys approached them. But it was like Bill Maher was still making jokes about just the 3 second clip without any of the additional context, and like even his audience watching it was like, "Oh, that's not what happened." Like,
It's a lot easier when you're just doing it on social media and you can just delete it if it doesn't work, but, when you've
I
got
had
an audience of 30 million people that are watching you live every Friday night, uh,
oh, dude,
that's
I follow some real estate agents who have been going through deleting all of their like homes only go up stuff from like 3 years ago now.
so, this you and I think, are more qualified to talk about real estate than, half of social media, because we seem to be two of the only people that, are under 50 that, aren't, licensed real estate agents in Canada. So, um, I'm curious here, when you think about the housing market in Canada, what goes through your head?
It depends where you live. That's honestly the long and short of it. Like I can still get a house in Sudbury for pretty cheap. If I want to live outside of Calgary, even Calgary now is starting to roll over, so it's not too bad. But I also have like an Ontario perspective on that. So when I'm here and I'm like, oh, houses are like 350, that's good. And everyone here is like, they used to be 275. I'm like, okay. So I think it all depends where you live. A lot of the complaints are around Toronto and Vancouver. Like I always laugh here because I'll go to Edmonton and do shows, and there'll be people on stage being like, "No one here will ever afford a home," and I'm like, "There's a townhouse for 150 up the road." It's just no, like Edmonton's a lovely town. I wouldn't live there. But it really is where you're willing to go. Like my brother used to live in downtown Toronto, then he moved out to Tillsonburg. This is long before everything blew up during the pandemic, and he's like, "I could everything I ever wanted is right here. If I wanna go see a Leafs game, I'll drive for 2 hours, whatever." Yeah, like
Um,
living in Calgary here, it's cheaper for me to live here, fly back to Ontario, and watch 3 Jays games than it was for me to live in Toronto and watch 3 Jays games. Like, that's how crazy difference everything is.
do you think that on social media, real estate agents and mortgage brokers play a bigger part of the discussion than what it is in the US?
I think in the US, they get pissed off at stuff faster than we do. Like, they get far more aggressive. During the pandemic, there was a 60 Minutes thing in Florida because their prices were going up, and they had 2 people crying on TV being like, "Oh, normal people used to be able to afford a home in Tallahassee. Now they're selling them for, like, 250, and these people are just bawling their eyes out." I'm like, "250? What?" So I think whenever like prices go up a little bit, they're far more like if you're the reason behind it, you just dump that politician, find a new guy who'll do whatever. Here, we'll like sit and watch everything blow up for like 6 years before we start mulling the idea of removing the politician.
The part that I find fascinating about it is just that it just seems like there's a disproportionately high amount of, media, for lack of a better term, real estate, that goes towards the whole, like, real estate influencer sector in Canada. Whereas,
Oh,
like
you mean
it just
the
doesn't
guys
seem like it's
renting Lamborghinis showing up at a new home project or whatever? I'm like, what is this?
they're they're the biggest accounts on Instagram. They're the biggest accounts on TikTok. They're the biggest accounts on Twitter.
It's just that housing became such an easy thing to do that everyone kind of rushed into it without having any idea. And then once it all blew up in their face, now you're seeing all these guys on Reddit being like, okay, I signed a bunch of fake documents to get this house. Now I'm fucked. What do I do? And it's like that you did that to yourself. You got caught up. You did this. You had no plan to get out. Now what?
It's
So it,
it's it's always kind of funny too when you see those Reddit threads because it's usually somebody who like they're it's like they go on Reddit and they're kind of looking for sympathy, and then they'll like admit that they committed fraud
I love
in.
that. Whenever they post that, they'll admit they committed fraud. Then the edit note, like 2 hours later, is always like, "Please stop telling me to kill myself." It's like, hey man, you're the reason everyone around you couldn't afford a home. You're the reason the home prices on your street are higher because that was the comparable now. Like it was a big scam. You were in on it and now it didn't work out. Nah, like that's I think I mentioned it in one of my tweets before. That's why I don't think that like a bailout is coming in any way for people because it's there we never had the internet in 2008. So you didn't have like this tidal wave of Instagram people being I don't know if you saw that video from like 2 years ago where it's all the guys standing around a pool talking about all the rentals and Airbnb properties they own.
Yeah,
Uh,
I've seen a few of them. I think I know
yeah.
exactly which one you're talking. Like they're like, I own 75 homes worth a value of 50 million,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and they
that
just kind of go
stuff.
through and they kind of go around the table.
Yeah, and the whole thing is built off of like each property goes up a certain amount of equity, so I borrow against that, buy 6 more, whatever, and it's like, okay, now it's flipped and they're all getting destroyed. That's what should happen. Like I don't think there you can't make up a story around it. Like that's not what a lot of it was. So it'll be really hard to sell people on like if you need to save that, how do you save that?
Another funny media narrative to me is whenever they talk about how these tenants will move into a rental property and then they just like won't pay any rent and they won't
That's
leave.
crazy, yeah. It depends on what's going on. Like I had a friend who rented out his apartment once. The people stopped paying, and then by the time he got it back, they had stripped everything out of the like all the faucets and stuff. They'd taken all of that and they had painted every wall in his house jet black. I have no idea why. Uh, could have probably just paid rent with the amount of money you put into that.
What's your take on everything that's been happening with immigration in Canada? Or do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, that one's entirely on the government. Like basically at some point during the pandemic, as I'll usually try to explain to people, you know, Canada has enough resources to throw a party for 350 people every year, we'll say. And then 10 minutes before the party started one year, Justin Trudeau walked in and was like, oh, by the way, I invited 600 more people. And every day since he's just been walking around that party pretending like they don't understand why everyone's upset. There's nowhere to sit and there's not enough food. Like that's exactly what happened. We put no effort into resources, build out houses, school spaces, healthcare space, none of that stuff. We were just like, come on in and then it'll all fix itself. It did not. It was just like I don't know. There was one point, there was a program where like the feds were like greeting people at Pearson Airport to like take pictures with them, like, oh, these are the new what like refugees and stuff to Canada. And then as soon as the photography thing was over, they just put them in a cab. The cab would drive them down to Peter Street, dump all their shit on the street, and then be like, all right, good luck. And then that was the whole program. And like even the shelter on Peter Street, the city of Toronto, were all like, hey, like, what is this? You guys are literally just dumping human beings outside of this place and you have no plan. And it's like, okay, well, at that point, is it more compassionate to save someone from a bad space so they can freeze to death on the streets of Toronto? Like that's not a good system.
So you think it was kind of a lot more just about I don't know if pontificating is the right word, but perhaps image posturing on the part of the Liberal government to
We had
make it.
a press release prime minister. He loved to whatever, cut ribbons, tell you all the programs that were happening, and then he'd split, and then you'd never hear again from any of those programs.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you remember when the US, the Roe versus Wade, when that got struck down. Like within an hour, Justin Trudeau was in front of cameras being like, that's never gonna happen in Canada. We're gonna make sure that doesn't happen. You watch, you'll see what we do. Didn't do a damn thing. Didn't change any rules, didn't put anything else in place. And then when it came time for the election, when they were asking about that, they were like, actually, there should never be any legislation. That's the new talking point. And it was just them covering their ass. It was their it's the same as Colbert or whatever it is, the Sid Sixero making rants for Instagram. It's like these are just clips for Instagram, so that your friends share it on their story. You go, oh, good, they're gonna fix abortion or whatever, and then there's no follow up because that's as long as anyone thinks of anything. Like it's just that 15 seconds. I felt good for the day. I assume they're working on it. Have a good one.
So over the weekend, the EU announced, or I guess the US and the EU both announced a trade deal, which they effectively went from uh, what I think worked out to, just given the nature of the tariffs, 1.5% tariffs on European products into the US, which was sort of on average based on the various sectors. Then Trump came in, said it was going to be blanketed 30%. Then they just did this deal over the weekend that's going to pull it down to 15%. The next question I think becomes, if you're sitting here in Canada, what's Canada going to do? How is this going to play out for Canada? Right now, Trump's saying that it's going to be there's a hard line. It's going to sit at 30% if Canada doesn't make a deal, and says that he thinks that that's how it's going to play out. What's your take on it? How do you think that this plays out for Canada?
I think I don't know. I don't want to say that we're like completely screwed, but it is fun watching Mark Carney realize that like only he believes he's the smartest man in the room. Uh, because I don't know if you remember, like I think it was like a month ago where we announced we had some deal with the EU about a defense pack, and the whole thing was like this is to get us to diversify from the US so they're not our main supplier. And then the EU came out today and was just like, oh no, the US is our main supplier. That's going to be part of the whole thing. And it's like we started off as this we're a collection of countries going up against America. Now it's like us and China, which I don't know if that was an accident. Because it keeps every time something like this happens, you'll see another whatever article in the Globe and Mail where it's like maybe we should sidle up more to China. It's like, or we could just try and figure out what everyone else is figuring out. Stick with our friends. It's it's interesting. I when he was whatever the central bankers, he grossly overinflated what he did in Canada. I don't know during the election when he was like, I whatever balance the budget and solve the deficit. It's like you didn't do any of those things, but okay. And I think when he was part of the central bank in the UK, like it's easy to talk to a central banker when you're talking to other things because you're not really the guy. Like I can tell you my ideas, you can tell me why you think it'll work, but at the end of the day, whoever the prime minister is, that's the dude who's gonna have to figure it out. Okay, well now you're the prime minister. You're not just that person in the room anymore. You're technically an ally, but you're also an adversary. So now it's no longer like we could be a team. Now it's I got to get the best for me and mine, and then you got to do the same for yours. I don't think he's figured that part out yet.
I don't think it's that hard to be the chairman of a central bank for a country like Canada. Uh, the Federal Reserve, I imagine, is a little bit more difficult, but like, I mean, really, like, oh, they give him some data, and then he just basically decides I'm going to keep the rates for the flat. I'm going to bump
Slightly
them
up
up
or slightly
25
low,
basis
yeah.
points, or I'm going to take them down 25 basis points, and like, really, there's a million smart people around him who are all running models, and they're all kind of like, yeah, and like it's usually figured out before it even happens based on the bond market. Uh, Now I know that we can get into dicey situations where the Bank of Canada starts actually having to step in, and I remember watching the press conference when Tiff Macklem announced Canada's version of quantitative easing, which they came up with a name for it, and it was and I just remember the press conference that at the
Oh, we told
time
everyone to
watching it
borrow their
live.
brains out.
And everybody's like, so how's this different than quantitative easing? And he's like, well, and Tim
Yeah.
Macklem just kept stumbling over his words, and then finally he's like, yeah, it's basically the same thing as quantitative easing.
Yeah, he was like,
And
quantitative easing is when you inject whatever a certain amount of money in the market. We're not injecting money. We're buying bonds from the government for them to inject money. And you're like, that's the same thing, man.
let me
uh,
Google that.
yeah. No, he was yeah, because I always put up that clip where he's like telling everybody to borrow their brains out at least once a year when everyone's like, how did we up like this? Him and who was the guy before him? Palaz.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Stephen Polaz.
he
Yeah,
was there right at the beginning of the pandemic, and I think he was one of the guys who was advocating for dumping just all the money. And he was on, I think, BNN, and he has like this amazing quote where he's like, "No one ever complained about a firefighter using too much water," and then like all of our fucking problems came from using too much water.
I don't know where you sit politically. I have a feeling that you probably lean conservative based on my sense of your
I am as
analysis.
I am as open as any human being can be to however you want to live your life, but I also believe money is real. Like that. Just
Yeah.
that's it.
Story I wanted to get to here. We had I guess he was a Christian affiliated. Some of the headlines here calling him mega supporting Christian rock singer Sean. I'm going to pronounce his name wrong. Sean Feucht. I guess I'll
I think
pronounce
that
it.
yeah, that might be it.
What's your take on what's happening here?
If we're subsidizing CBC, we're subsidizing that guy because that's the most free media I've ever seen anyone get for nothing at all. Apparently he has toured Canada repeatedly before. It was never a problem. There's a picture of him shaking hands with Trump now, so that's enough to get the throw the red meat out for everyone to lose their minds. He's had his gigs canceled all across like the East Coast so far. And like the cities that are canceling his gigs are being very overt about the fact that we're just canceling your gig, not because you've actually done anything bad or said anything bad, but like we disagree with your values, I think is what they say. Somebody was posting about community standards, and I think that's like the Facebookification of real life. Uh, like you're basically, oh, usually when I'm on the internet, I just hit block. I don't have to see it anymore. And now you're like trying to do that to a human being for something that you would have otherwise not paid attention to. And it's just that he won't go away. And it's like all this guy's doing is saying it. Who cares?
But just this is what the left in Canada has kind of turned into. And
Huh.
I always find it funny too, because Canadians, they always think that they're so polite and friendly and welcoming.
No.
And then it's like you hear stories like this. It's like, we don't like your politics. You can get out of town.
Uh, no, my favorite one was the whatever it was like right after the election, or sorry, it was on Canada Day. The Globe and Mail was like, "Oh, the left has won the Canadian flag back" or something. I was like, "It never went anywhere. I don't know what you're talking about." It's like everyone I knew who flew the Canadian flag before the pandemic is still flying the Canadian flag. Their politics haven't really changed. Everyone who thinks that we're like some sort of hellscape colonialist, blah blah blah, they're still not flying one. Like I don't know why you think anyone has changed,
So,
but
so
like for
they're
this
so
guy, go
they're
ahead, sorry.
basically all just taking it out on poor Sean Feucht.
Yeah.
He just came here, wanted to sing some of his Christian rock tunes.
Well, that's what like whatever was a pair. I saw him post where he's like, "We're in contact with the White House about what's going on with this persecution." And I was like, "Great! Like fucking orange juice is going to be $15 a jug now because whatever someone at CBC couldn't stand that this dude was going to sing to like 50 people."
Ugh. I
I enjoy the insanity of it. It's that I like that they've since dropped like the CBC ever since the whatever the last debate was in English. They have completely dropped any sort of like, okay, well, everyone knows that we're leaning this way now. There's no reason that we should pretend to be neutral. And it's becoming very like apparent in their coverage of things. And you're like, oh, okay, this is just you are like nakedly the voice of whoever in the government now.
All right, well, Frank, I guess we'll wrap it up from there. What's if anybody in our audience wants to get more of your commentary, where can they go to?
You can follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Last of the Franks. I think I have a Facebook page. I never use it, so don't go looking for me there. And then I have a YouTube page as well that's also under Last of the Franks.
Okay. Well, thanks for hopping on. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this interview, do me a favor, smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching.